everybody. Welcome back to The Deconversionists with your hosts, Alan Bondar, a.k.a. The Unraveler, and Elliot Christopherson. Today, we have a very special guest on with us from the Rethinking Faith podcast, Josh Patterson. Welcome, Josh. You know what I need real quick? Hang on.
Nice.
There we go. Now, Elliot, did you hear that this time?
I could not hear that.
You still doesn't hear that. You heard it though, Josh, right?
I did. Yeah, there was cheering.
I was wondering if these even worked because I tried to test it with Elliot. It didn't work. So,
well,
Elliot,
Ellen, you're just going to have to do your own cheering.
Yeah, you're just out, man. You're just out. In fact, hear that? No, because you can't hear these cool sound effects.
Damn it!
That was like fun, like hand drums followed up by a cymbal crash. I'll just narrate.
My imagination will have to.
That's what I'll do. I'll play the effect, and Josh will narrate it. Oh man! Well, this is going to
maybe I'll hear it on the replay.
Maybe yes, maybe you. Oh, I'm sure you will. So this is going to be a fun episode. Welcome to everybody who is watching and participating in this, Christian or ex-Christian or never Christian. We're just glad to have you here. It's going to be a fun dialogue. Josh, of course, is coming from the sometimes Christian, sometimes not paradigm, which is always interesting to me. Elliot and I are coming from the atheist paradigm. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. Josh and I have had our own shows together. I joined him once on his podcast, and then he came on to the Unraveler show, and we did one there. It was a really friendly dialogue. Today, we're going to set aside the friendship, and we're going to go hardcore. We're going to debate this thing. But don't worry. At the end of this thing, Josh and I will still be glad to grab a beer together because that's just
always
the way it goes, and it'll be fun. So,
I'm here to learn. So I'm going to be really light on debating today because I honestly don't know anything about Josh's position, and I just it sounds interesting. So I'm not going to argue too much.
Well, that's all right. Once you hear it, I'm sure you'll have a lot to say.
Okay.
If you're watching, feel free to drop comments or questions as we go through. And if the conversation lends itself to be able to throw in a question while we're streaming here during the time we're dialoguing, we'll do that. I'll throw out a question. But otherwise, whatever there are questions, I will definitely tackle them before we end the show at the end. So feel free to do that as we're talking. All right. So Josh and Elliot, today you're meeting for the first time, like Elliot said. So that's great. And you'll find Josh is a really great guy. And I'm really excited to have you on, Josh, because one thing I do appreciate about you is your ability to just really have a friendly dialogue and not take things personally or get offended if someone pushes back or whatever. So,
oh no, you won't hurt my feelings.
You might hurt mine. So be kind. No, I'm just kidding. This is great. All right. So let's start off by kind of defining Christianity. That's a good place to start because we are going to be dialoguing primarily about that and whether or not Christianity makes sense, or if it doesn't in our minds, how you're trying to make sense of it through process theology, beginning with process philosophy, which of course Whitehead, and then I know a lot of Christians that are using process theology now, basing on Whitehead's theories and stuff. So that's where we're going to go. And I want you to elaborate on that a little bit because neither Elliot, it seems like because he hasn't watched your content, or you might just be familiar with Whitehead. I don't know. But a lot of the listeners may not be aware at all of what Whitehead is. And I'll be honest, it's not like I'm an expert in Whitehead. I mean, I know very little, but it'll be good for us to kind of get an insight. But just beginning with the basic classical theism. Let's start there because at the very least, one thing we can say is that there is something called classical theism. And it's called that for a reason, because it's kind of like the classic theism. It's the original, so to speak, of what people would define as Christianity. It bases its roots in what they would say was the original version starting out with the apostles. Now, of course, each religion or denomination is going to steer from that a little bit and say they have their own version of it, whatever. But by and large, I would say the creeds would pretty much define what would be, apostolic Christianity. That's what they would say. That's what would be traditional Christianity. And classic theism defines God, and I would imagine the creedal version of Christianity would define God in ways like he is omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. He knows all things, past, beginning, and future, because he's omniscient. He doesn't he's not surprised by anything. He is the creator of the universe, ex nihilo nihil fit. Out of nothing, nothing comes. So he's the one who is behind it all. He's outside of space and time. So he is the one that defines what space and time is, and he's the only one that breaks those rules because he's not existent in our universe. He's outside of it. He, unlike anything else, has no beginning. Everything else does, but he is the only thing that exists eternally and infinitely. And he also is a Trinity. He's broken down into the Son and the Holy Spirit, and then the Father, of course, the one from which all flows. So you have the Father overflowing into the Son, and the Spirit, being the one being the love, the joy, the happiness, the peace, all of that they share with one another, and that makes up the eternal Trinity. Of course, because of man's sin, which was all a part of God's plan, he becomes a human in the form of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ walks the earth to fulfill the plan of God. He dies on the cross, resurrects to satisfy the wrath of God, to give justification to those who come to Jesus by faith. And it has to be faith alone, because if you add works to it, then now it's no longer trust in Jesus. You're trying to contribute something of your own merits to God's acceptance, and that's just not going to work, because our works are as, our best deeds are as filthy rags. And so that essentially is the long and short of the story. We're sinners in Adam, we're saved and righteous in Christ. And that's how the basic Christianity, as I would understand it historically, in the most basic sense, would stand. Is there any pushback to anything I said? Any clarifications? Any additions that you guys would like to say there? Actually, let me start with Elliot, because Elliot's probably going to more so agree with me, and then maybe I'm missing something, and then Josh, you can jump in after that.
Cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple things. So you start off trying to define classical theism, and then you kind of ran that into classical Christianity. I wonder if we should maybe put a firewall between those two if we're defining classical theism, maybe. So my assumption of classical theism is that there is an all-powerful creator. He's responsible for the universe. He's responsible for humans existing, and he interacts with the universe or with humans in some way, as opposed to a deistic God who basically wound up the clock and then just let it run. I guess you could go a little bit further and say maybe classical theism kind of implies that God has some sort of message or some sort of path to maybe bring humans to him, in whatever form that might be. And then Christianity takes that, runs with it, and explains the entire story and all the theology of humans falling, and then God giving them the specific path to come back through Jesus Christ, the Son of God. I'll just ask you, Ellen, does classical theism include a Trinity, or is that a Christian exclusive?
That's a good question. I thought it included a Trinity, because in my understanding, classic theism is uniquely a Christian view. I don't know that any other religion would hold to the classic theism the way the Christianity would.
I think maybe in other cultures in history, if they created any kind of gods that interacted with humans and that are also responsible for the creation of them, that might fall into a looser definition of classical theism, because it's an interactive God that's responsible for the creation of the world. So I guess you could maybe technically apply that to the Roman or Norse gods, or even some Native American legends.
Okay, so we're talking very loosely, because my understanding also would be that classic theism would include that he authored the Bible. The Bible is a part of that. It's his word. That's where we discover who this God is.
I could be wrong. At this point, I'd have to just Google it.
That's fine. And here in one is one of the things I just want to say, and then Josh, I am gonna turn it over to you.
Cool.
What we can see though is that even if we nailed down the precise definition of classic theism, and it was a definition that every Christian agreed with, we already know that there are deterrents from whatever that definition is. And Josh is coming in with one of those deterrents from whatever that definition is. And similarly, Christianity's view of classic theism, Christianity's view of God has a historic entrenchment, and some of the things that I described, including Jesus and his salvific work and whatnot, those are all part and parcel of the apostolic theism, apostolic Christianity, how the church would define it. But even if there are some variances that I said that may not even be included in the original, it just goes to show once again that Christianity is constantly deterring away from what was the original. Does anybody really know what the exact original was? I guess you can't, because we don't even have the original manuscripts of the scriptures. So we don't know. But what we do know is whatever it was is not what it is now. It has definitely become something different. Would we at least agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I would want to say it is that there's no one Christianity. There has always been multiple Christianities, plural. And so that's how I would want to say it. I agree with you, Alan. If there is such thing as an original Christianity, we don't have access to it. I don't know what an original Christianity would be.
Well, would you not agree that whatever the Apostle Paul established was the original Christianity?
I mean, maybe, but people have been debating what Paul meant since forever.
No, I'm not asking our understanding of what Paul established. I just mean, assuming he actually established it, whatever he established would have been the original, correct?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. Because I think, like I said, there's always just been a history of interpretation. And I don't think Paul sat down and was like, I'm going to create Christianity today. I think Paul was interacting out of his Jewish context, trying to make sense of some crazy experience that he had. I don't see Paul as a systematic theologian. I think Paul is just a dude trying to figure out his experience within his own, Jewish foundations and roots, and then trying to make sense of okay, did the Messiah come? What does that look like? What about all these Gentile fools? How are they included? Are they not included? So yeah, I don't know.
I think the problem is we don't have Christian writings that predate Paul's, as far as I know. We have a lot that came after in the first century. In fact, Bart Ehrman's got the book called Lost Christianities, where he details a lot of these Gnostic cults or different spin-offs, and then just fragments from there. But I don't know if we can get any closer to the original than Paul, since I think he was the first one to write about it.
Yeah, we can start with Paul as a foundation. That's fine.
I mean, would you at least the scriptural fact it was the first time that they were called Christians?
I think so. Yeah,
that's what the text says in Antioch, right? So,
yeah.
So at the very least, if that's the first time they were called Christians, there must have been something established then that was the first time that was a thing, right? So we may not know precisely what it is, but we do know that there is an original.
Mm-hmm. I guess, yeah. Well, I guess it would have to be.
I guess what I'd ask Josh is what all do you use as your source material? Do you use anything that's extra biblical writings, or is it all from the New and Old Testament?
I mean, I've definitely engaged extra biblical texts, for sure. I'm familiar with a lot of the Gnostic Gospels. I mean, I've read a decent amount of Bart Ehrman's work, but also I'm I'm already weird because I'm not a creedal Christian, so I'm not going to try to argue from the creeds or something like that. As Alan knows, I tend to make a much more existential claim as to why I might still hang out within Christianity. But growing up, the Bible was always, the source text. I grew up as a conservative evangelical. And so kind of so Alan's story, kind of how he laid things out a little bit earlier, would have been something similar to how I grew up.
So you were always a traditional Christian, I guess, like you said, evangelical, maybe fundamentalist. At some point, you had some kind of, I wouldn't call it a deconversion experience, but at some point you kind of went away from that. I'm interested in what that process, what your experience was like.
Yeah, sure. So I experienced what today is colloquially, however you say that word. You know,
That's a hard word. I struggle with that word.
I don't even know how to spell it. What people are using in normal language to me called deconstruction. And so like I like, just some background. I was a pastor for 6 years. During my time as a pastor, the first church I worked in, I experienced emotional, verbal, spiritual, and borderline physical abuse at the hands of the founding pastor and my direct report. And so that started to like break some things for me. And then I just took an extreme interest in theology and started reading a whole lot and studying philosophy, and then came to realize that the evangelical Christianity that I've been handed and was told this is historical Christianity, that just simply was not true. I would argue that evangelical Christianity is ahistorical and also deeply anti-intellectual. And so I have pretty much removed myself from that understanding of Christianity and have a much broader and wider recognition of the tradition. I'm able to like realize things like, hey, much of what I was taught comes out of the Protestant Reformation, was only a reformation of one half of the church. Like we still have all these Eastern Orthodox people running around doing and saying stuff that I was taught is heretical, but like those guys have been here way before I got here. And so, yeah, my perspective is much more broad. I don't feel a need to affirm the creeds. So like that's all that's already a problem. I like reject the conflation of penal substitutionary atonement with the gospel. I think that's a huge error that conservative fundamentalists make. So I don't know. That's not really giving you much clarity, but I think this is why Alan likes to talk to me, because I'm not normal. I don't fit a box well.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting for sure. So in your opinion, is there a proper form of Christianity in its original purest form? And if so, like you think that you found it? Like whatever your version of Christianity is now, like do you think that's the right one, or is there a right one?
Yeah, I don't know about like, is there a right one or is there a wrong one? I would talk about it differently, that I stand within an ongoing tradition that has consistently been transforming and changing over time. Like, I don't think that this is the correct true version of Christianity. I think there are versions that are better or more faithful to, say, like the teachings of Jesus or something like that than other expressions. But I don't know that I have access to like, this is what is Christianity, the true version, and everyone else is wrong. Instead, like I like someone like Gadamer, who recognizes that, like, basically understands that we are always historically situated and shaped by like our traditions, kind of like presuppositions almost. And so whenever Gadamer critiques tradition, he realizes that he's standing in his tradition and critiquing it both by trying to be faithful to the past version of the tradition and also being honest in the current historical moment. So it's not a critique like in spite of the tradition, but rather because of it. And so maybe that's helpful framing, just to recognize that like I can stand within the tradition and critique it in service to itself. So it's like an active engagement rather than this kind of like, I don't know, blind acceptance of here's the creeds, this is what you have to believe.
So I have some questions here.
Sure.
So number one, so let me just use an example here, and then maybe you can help clarify a little bit. So this is a pen, right? And we would all agree this is a pen. There's a problem with this pen. It writes well, but I can't talk to my friends through it. It's very frustrating. Right. It's got some real problems. So I found a new pen. This is a pen. So now I have this pen. It's different than this pen, but they're both pens. But the problem now, this pen has a problem too. This pen, I can't wipe my ass with it when I go to the bathroom. So this is also a pen. So I have 3 different versions of pens, all of which do entirely different things. They look nothing alike, but I'm still calling them all pens. What I hear you doing is that precise thing, and that's what I see Christians doing. It's like, if you don't like what Christianity is, why are we doing something entirely different with it, and yet still calling it the pen. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Sure. Well, I think what I would go back and say is like the pen, how I would see it is like the pen that I was presented with at first and told this is a pen. It was not true that this was the entirety of the tradition. This is just one small aspect of it. But rather the pen, the phone, and the toilet paper all make up the larger tradition. And so the reason there's different ways of being is because there isn't just one version of Christianity. Even though I was sold the lie that American evangelical Christianity is historic Christianity, when it's not. It's a post-Enlightenment modern conception of the tradition that likes to parade as if it's the historic tradition. But like they should go read like early patristic fathers, or like I said, go check out some like, I don't know, the Ethiopian like Orthodox Church or Coptic Christianity or the Eastern Orthodox. Like there's all these expressions of it. So like just the pen isn't the thing. I think it's broader than that, if that makes sense.
It makes. Sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
No, you first. That's fine.
It makes sense in a way until you talk about something like salvation, which is a pretty consistent theology throughout, as far as I can tell, just about every version of Christianity. Whether I go to the Eastern Orthodox or the Catholic Church or fundamentalist Baptists, I'm going to get the same core belief, the same core doctrine that humans are fallen and there's a way back, and that way is through Jesus Christ, through some version of faith to reconcile with God. What I don't understand about what you're saying is like, have you rejected the core premise of like 99% of Christianity, and you've come up with something different or adding something to that, or like what's your opinion about the road to salvation that leads through like every version of Christianity, almost every?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it is rather obvious. Like I agree with you that like talking about salvation has always been something that has been consistent within the tradition, although I do think it's often talked about differently. Like salvation, what I was taught growing up was about like, Josh, you're evil piece of shit, basically can't do anything good. You need Jesus, right? Jesus died in your place. And now the good news is you can go to heaven when you die, and that's salvation. And that's like a very escapist, otherworldly conception of salvation. When then you have somebody like N.T. Wright, who argues, no, salvation isn't about going to heaven when you die. Salvation is actually a way of living into this present reality. So it's a mode of being in the world. It's not about being rescued, but rather about like seeing a more true and more beautiful way to live. It's about becoming more human. So like, it's not, salvation in that sense is not that like, sin is what makes humans humans. That actually dehumanizes people, and living into a certain way of being in the world, right? The kingdom of God or whatever. That is salvation. That is salvific, in that you are living into the kingdom of God in the here and now. And like me personally, if I were to have to talk about salvation currently, I would want to tie it to this world kind of stuff, similar to N.T. Wright. But I'd also want to pick up on like liberation theologies. People like James Cone, who is like fantastic Black theologian, and tie salvation to this world, not something that happens after we die. So yeah, it's there.
So, I mean, essentially, though, what you're saying is this version of Christianity has a lot of shit wrong. So, especially penal substitution and sin and all the elements that made it Christianity. So you created this version that is better than this version, clearly, but essentially, this isn't just another form of the same thing. You're saying this form is entirely wrong because its whole system is based on penal substitution. So this can't also be Christianity if this is Christianity, because this says Christianity is accomplished through penal substitution. And you're saying, no, it's not. So you're entirely contradicting one another, and they can't both be the same thing. So what you've created is something entirely better, I agree, but it's an entirely different religion. It's not Christianity, or this isn't Christianity and yours is. One or the other, but they can't both be Christianity.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the problem of conflating an atonement theory with the gospel and like there's, I mean, tons of debates about this, but as both of you guys know, there is not one atonement theory. Like the Bible doesn't offer one atonement theory. Historically, there's been like 7 or 8 different atonement theories that different expressions of Christianity kind of wrap themselves around. So like Christus Victor was extraordinarily popular very early on and continues to be popular in different expressions. PSA, penal substitutionary atonement, is something that we don't really see until the Reformation. Like that's Calvin and Luther getting worried about shit and trying to like give their version, and they're just trying to be faithful to the tradition too. Like I don't want to shit on them too much. I mean, I think they took like Anselm's conception of atonement and made it worse. But like Anselm was also just trying to express like the Christian faith in his own time, because Anselm's whole bit was like the based off of like who you sin against, right? Like the feudal system. So for Anselm, like if a peasant sinned against another peasant, that's not that big of a deal. But once a peasant sins against a king, now we have a problem because you're going up in the hierarchy. So his whole atonement thing was based off of not that you sinned, but who you sinned against, which was God. And so like that's a huge big deal. And then Calvin and Luther come along and take that and they make penal substitutionary atonement. Or like later expressions, you get like scapegoat theory, or you get just like satisfaction theory in general, or moral exemplar theory. So I don't think we can just necessarily pit them against one another. I think what I'm trying to say is we need to recognize that the Christian tradition has thought about all of these things in a wide variety of ways, in a diverse variety of ways. And I see that as a feature, not a bug. But yes, I would agree. Like PSA sucks, so I don't want that one.
But if I come along and I say, hey, I'm a Christian, and Christianity is the fact that I'm a sinner and I need a savior to die for my sins so that I can have a relationship with God. And you come along and you say, I'm a Christian and I don't believe any of that. I don't think Christianity has anything to do with someone dying for your sins. I don't even think you're a sinner. And your relationship with God is intact. And really, I don't even believe in God half the time. Sometimes I'm an atheist. I mean, you start putting those two together and you're like, how is it possible that those two can even remotely be Christianity? Because we're not just talking about variances there. You're talking about extreme contradictions. Mm-hmm. They're exact opposites of one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess. So again, for myself, like that's. Hold on, I have to gather my train of thought, because I would want to reject that particular aspect, but still, again, recognize the larger picture. But like, I don't know that I would say that people aren't sinners. I think that's actually one of like the easiest bits to get in Christianity. I mean, I don't think that total depravity is true, but I think it's just kind of factual that people do stupid shit. So, and like we tend to screw things up. I don't think that necessitates like, okay, now, all of this stuff. I forget what your actual question was, but so you could repeat if you want to, but
essentially just how, because I agree with you. We do stupid stuff. I would just call that either mistakes or evil or whatever it may be called. But
right,
you call it sin. The only reason you call it that is because your source material tells you that.
Calls it sin, right?
But even then, I definitely want to come back to Elliot's question in a minute, because his question earlier, what's your source material? That's super interesting to me. That's a great question, because it sounds like you're deriving totally different theologies from the same source material as somebody else who is using the Old Testament, whereas I know you don't typically like to use the Old Testament because, and you talked about what was the theory you said about the ram or whatever, the heifer theory or whatever it was you said earlier.
Rene Girard's scapegoat theory.
Yeah, the scapegoat theory, whatever. But like the scapegoat was definitely part of the Old Testament ritual. So, we'll get back to that in a second. But my question here was, how do you square two exactly, regardless if it's yours or somebody else's, or you're making that small nuance, you still believe in sin. The point is there's Christians who don't like, and Christian, look, Ellie and I encounter Christians, every Christian seems to have their own version of Christianity. And so some of them quite literally contradict like literally contradict each other. How can they both be Christianity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think they both can be. I think that's fair. But I think, like, specifically with the salvation bit, though, is I would argue when people, again, conflate PSA with the gospel and then say this is Christianity, they're only giving you a small piece of what the larger Christian tradition has always said. Like, it hasn't always just been about, like, going to heaven when you die, right? Even Jesus prays, like, for kingdom of God to be on earth as it is in heaven, and talks about, like, taking care of the widows and the orphans and the slaves being set free. So there's, like, a deep liberative aspect to the Christian faith and tradition as well. And it just seems like different expressions of Christianity have focused on different things, or, like, to Elliot's point, different source material. Like, a lot of Western Christianity is they love Paul. And then you have these other expressions that are like, well, wait a minute, isn't Jesus the whole point? Right? And you have people like the Anabaptists who radically center Jesus in all of their theology, and then get killed by all the people who like Paul because they're like, you like Jesus too much. So I guess, like, in a way, I'm agreeing with you. Like, there are contradictory versions of Christianity and that different people hold, and I don't think both of them can be true. But again, also for me, like, I don't think religion is best understood as ascribing to a set of mental propositions. Like, I don't think it's belief based. I would rather say religion is, like, at its heart about orienting oneself towards value and, like, what matters most, what is worthy of one's finitude. And then Christianity is a wisdom tradition that one can stand in and participate in existentially. And so, yeah, when people start arguing about beliefs, of course, they're going to contradict, because different people have different perspectives. They're going to see things differently. They are reading the same source material and getting wildly different translations, right? That's why, what's the joke? Like, you can ask 3 Bible scholars the proper interpretation of the book of Romans, and you'll get 14 answers. Right.
So,
yeah.
But the interesting thing is that every one of these Christians will claim that they have it right because God told them, or they're interpreting the Bible correctly. And so every one of these versions of Christianity, or nuances, as you might say, are still rooted in one basic fundamental problem: belief in a God that has no reason, you have no reason to believe exists.
Yeah, well, so I mean, you know me, Alan, I reject the God of classical theism. I believe that God to be incredulous. And so that's where my process thought comes in. My conception of the divine is reflective of the philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead, which again stands in rejection of the God of classical theism. So that's why I can say with you, God is dead, and with Nietzsche, God is dead, because again, Nietzsche was also saying the God of classical theism is incredulous.
So Whitehead was not a Christian, though. So that's an interesting thing for me, why you ended up as a Christian and he didn't, if you're following his model. But his model also basically just asserts, like Christians do, that some God exists without warrants, no proof, no evidence. He just decided to switch the classic God for his version of God, the way he defines it. And sure, it's entirely a different God, but why a God? Why just like here's the thing. My wife Ray and I, we're always debating this term God, because she doesn't mind using the word God. She's all about it. But I know for certain, because of endless conversations with her, she does not mean God the way I mean God. Mm-hmm. But my beef with her and everybody constantly using the term God in a non-classic way is, when you use the word God, by and large, we know what God means. God is much like we defined him earlier. It's some supernatural, powerful being out there that is behind everything, has the power to stop evil if he wants, but chooses not to. He's conscious. He's an agent. He created the world. Like, that's the way most people understand God. Along came a group of people like Whitehead and said, hey, we're just going to come up with some new idea, and we're going to call it God too. And it just became utterly confusing and useless, because it means nothing, because it has nothing to do with what people understand as God. And so my question is, why? Why are you continuing to use a word that literally has its roots in something entirely different, and would also require a dictionary change, because the way you're using it, and Whitehead used it, means nothing in the dictionary. It's a totally different word. energy would be a far better use of the way you guys are defining it, except that you believe that it has conscience of some sort. And I would say, I don't know where you're getting that from and why you think that. You're just kind of throwing that out of the air. But that, that to me is a huge issue. And then on top of that, then why Christianity? Why does it matter? Like, what you're proposing is a worldview that's entirely different than the predominant worldview of Christianity. And it's just your worldview. And it's like, why not just say, hey, I have a worldview? Why call it Christianity? Why continue to use terms that convolute the conversation when it's absolutely not the same thing at all?
Yeah, that's my question as well. Like, why use the Bible at all? Why, if you're going to stray so far from mainstream Christianity, and I say that because I know that that whatever denomination or sect you are of Christianity, yeah, there's going to be arguments over the nuances of the theology. The devil's in the details. Fine, but overall, and maybe I'm just really ignorant about this and just haven't familiarized myself with a lot of the stuff that you're reading and listening to. But I don't see the huge difference that you do amongst Christianity at large. I see this core proposition of who humans are, what the problem is, and what the road to salvation is, in general. And it seems to me like you've strayed really far away from that, to the point where, like, why even use the Bible? Why not just kind of, I guess, make up your own version of God, your own religion? It sounds like that's what you're doing.
Yeah, sorry. I'm writing down, trying to capture all of the questions you guys asked.
We'll shut up now and let you catch up. Sorry.
No, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. So I think what I'm going to have to step back, though. Maybe I should just step back and try to explain where I'm coming from to begin with. So I very much am a firm believer that all things should start in experience, and that we should believe based on evidence. That's my foundation. And so the part of the reason I ended up critiquing and breaking away from classical theism is because the God of classical theism did not meet my experience of reality. I think they are deeply contradictory and they don't work. I also don't think the God of classical theism is the God found in the pages of Scripture. I think you can argue for a God of classical theism using the Bible, but I think you can also argue for a God that looks more open and relational as well. So I think even within the pages of the Bible, there's not one, this is the right answer kind of thing. I think the Bible is multivocal, not univocal. So anyway, starting with experience and also recognizing Christianity is a religion that lacks a metaphysical system. There is no inherent metaphysical system for Christianity. And so, great. That means that when ancient Greek metaphysics give me classical theism, I'm free to reject that because it's not inherent to the religious system. So first and foremost, process thought for me philosophically is my metaphysical grounding of everything else that I do. And so I start with Whitehead's metaphysics, which basically he recognized a few things. He recognized that Descartes' dualism was bullshit and not helpful. And so what people do is they either become an idealist and say everything is consciousness, or they become a reductionistic materialist, which is kind of like the assumed metaphysics of science today, although most scientists won't admit that they have a metaphysic because they don't like being critiqued on it, but they all assume it. So that's one option. Or Whitehead does what's called dual aspect monism. So he says, no, it's actually both and. The fundamental realities that create, are generative of the universe have both a mental and a physical aspect. So that's an important thing to take note of. And then that also allows Whitehead to recognize, a lot of times within the kind of reductionistic materialist space, or Whitehead calls it a mechanistic materialism, is that makes humans seem awfully special. That the entire universe is nothing but dead matter and just kind of this machinery. And then all of a sudden there's people that are meaning-making machines that experience value, beauty, truth, goodness. And they want to say things like the universe doesn't matter, the universe doesn't care about you. When in reality, Whitehead flips that on its head and says, no, humans are not a metaphysical exception to the universe, but they are an exemplification of it. And so you are what the universe is up to. And so the universe does care because you care. You experience value, beauty, truth, goodness. And so, oh, do you have a question, Elliot?
Yeah, before you get too far ahead, I wonder
Okay.
if you could just define what you mean by metaphysics.
Metaphysic is just kind of like the philosophical endeavor concerning the nature and character of reality. So I'm not talking about like weird witch shit in the corner of like your independent bookstore with like rocks and whatever. Just like the core of what reality is, what it's made of, how it functions.
Like an abstract concepts or thoughts, ideals.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like you would say gravity would be a metaphysical idea.
No, well, gravity is something that we can like, that we see and experience. I don't know if gravity would necessarily be metaphysics. I think that's just physics.
Yeah, that'd be part of the physical world.
What would be an example to you of a metaphysical thing then?
Metaphysics is like behind physics. It's like kind of the system of how things work and function. So the idea that the world is only made up of material objects, that is a metaphysical claim. That's a philosophical claim. That's not a scientific claim. That's a metaphysical one.
Well, because meta is with, so we're talking about with the physical. So we're talking about something that's not physical, and I'm asking for an example of what would be a metaphysical thing.
Yeah, so like yeah, like what I just explained, like dual aspect monism is a metaphysical claim that the building blocks of reality are both mental and physical.
Would the laws of physics be metaphysical, as in they are something that explains the physical?
That's what I meant by gravity. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I think
the theory of gravity would be the metaphysical concept that explains the physical force.
Right? Yeah.
That's
sure.
I don't.
I don't know. I don't want to venture.
So essentially, like metaphysics are the things that humans like make up or create to explain reality.
I don't know if it's necessarily make up. I think it's based off experience, but yes.
Like discover rather than make up.
Sure, discover. But I think like we discover like physics too, right? Like math is something that we discover. I don't think.
Yeah, great. So that's what I'm asking. Like, give me an example of something we've discovered that would be considered metaphysical.
I don't think that's. I might be again out over my skis. I don't think that's a metaphysical question. I think metaphysics is like behind the thing. It's like a foundational perspective of like how reality. Or actually, hold on, let me see. My buddy Andrew has a definition. Maybe that'll be helpful. We'll steal from him.
Well, I'm pretty sure I understand how you're explaining it, and I would agree, I guess, with caveats, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah. Oh, so here we go. He says,
I would define a concept as a metaphysical thing. Typically, you're talking about spirits or something like that. So I'm curious what I really don't want to move forward until I understand this better.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like spirits and ghosts and angels.
Right, you've made that clear, but that's typically what metaphysical is. So that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, within like certain Christian traditions, I can understand the confusion. So for how I'm talking about it, here's Andrew, who's pulling from Whitehead, says metaphysics is the integrative branch of philosophy that endeavors to frame and categorize the ultimate ideas and concepts essential to understand the general nature of reality and our experience within it. Put simply, defining metaphysics. Any and all dimensions of human experience in order to construct a tentative scheme of ideas in which to interpret that experience.
All right, so you're essentially defining metaphysics as that which, like, the concepts that we derive from our experience, how we explain it, basically.
Yeah, our interpretive framework. I guess that was helpful. Because like
if that's how we're defining it. But again, like that sounds like we're now redefining terms again. We've redefined God, we've redefined metaphysics, we redefined Christianity, we're just making it up as we go along, and then we're calling it the same things it used to be called, but just calling it something different. And what ends up happening is it sounds like, wow, we've come up with something really brilliant when all it is just something different, but it's not the same. And it's so confusing because I don't know what we're talking about anymore.
Sure. Well, you have to remember Whitehead's not doing, and this is why it's confusing to throw process theism at people prior to process philosophy, because it's notoriously difficult to understand. But the metaphysic is like the foundation. the God actually becomes a metaphysical necessity for Whitehead while he's constructing his philosophical scheme. So Whitehead's whole bit was he recognized that like the assumed metaphysic of modern world did no longer worked, because like when Whitehead was writing, things like quantum physics and all were kind of blowing up and popping off. And so he's trying to recognize like, hey, our Newtonian physics, yeah, they work to some extent, and it's great because we get computers and microphones, and it's like helped us get penicillin and stuff. But like it doesn't fully work once you get down into these like smaller scales and reality. And so Whitehead's like, I need a system that can actually capture all of human experience and experience of the universe. What we know with science, that can be flexible and mended and updated as we continue to learn more and more and more about reality. And so that's what Whitehead's doing. And then he basically comes to this recognition and position that reality is more event-like than substance-based. So it has an event-based ontology rather than a substance-based ontology. So it's a whole different way of thinking and engaging the world. And then for Whitehead, God becomes this almost like metaphysical necessity, but God is not this like, again, thing that is outside of our metaphysical system. Instead, God for Whitehead is the chief exemplification of it. So God is natural. God is a part of the natural world. God isn't this like creature or being out there. So he's not just like pulling it out of his ass. He's trying to like, for Whitehead, he experiences things like beauty and goodness and value as real. And so he makes an axiological claim, a values-driven claim for the necessity of God, not like we're going to do logical syllogisms or something like that.
Right. My beef with Whitehead isn't his philosophy or his attempts to understand these things. Personally, a lot of the things that he said and that you're explaining, great. All are wonderful ventures to understand the world better. But to apply the word God to it is so freaking unnecessary. Like it just doesn't even add up why you would do that. It's so confusing. Like, why would you redefine God entirely, and then just say, well, this is God? What's the point? Why not just come up with a whole new thing? Like energy, we came up with a term called energy. Why not come up with a new thing? If it's not energy, call it energy plus conscience or something. I don't know, but not God. Like, why call it that?
I've got
ultimate reality is fine.
I've got a question for you. Then you said God's not a being,
right? Which I think that's a classic Christian claim.
Right,
that's within the tradition for a long time. Yeah.
So when the Bible talks about God in all the ways that it does, in my opinion, am I reading this wrong when I'm assuming that this is an actual, he or a person that is portrayed as a being in the Bible? Like what do you think that is, according to the scripture?
Sure. I would not argue that God has a penis. And I don't think God is a dude. God is a spirit, a non-localized whatever.
Well, take the gender part of it out. Just the God in the Bible seems like it's referring to an actual being, an actual like mind. Is that incorrect?
No, I mean, I think the authors of scripture are pointing, I mean, I would say they are pointing to their conception and understanding of ultimate reality as they experience it. And then are relating with said thing. So I don't think they're interacting with something that doesn't exist, but I don't necessarily think that they get God right all the time.
So in Genesis 1:1, when it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a creation myth that are common throughout different religious traditions, but I personally reject creation ex nihilo, and I don't think you actually find creation ex nihilo in the text. It's the later Christian doctrine, because reading it there in Hebrew demonstrates that it's not there was nothing and then God did something. Rather, there was a chaotic something and God orders it. And so within because of my philosophical, assumptions, the universe and God necessitate each other. They cannot exist apart from one another. So like this current cosmic epoch is what Whitehead would call it. Our current universe is one of, possible many that have come before and will come and go again after.
Okay, so then let's jump forward to the New Testament and like John 3:16, which most Christians would say is like the core of Christianity. Like, for God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, so I very much believe that I would say it is true that God loves the world, and I would even go even further to say God.
But who is
loves
that though? Who is that? It sounds to me like an actual being.
A non less than personal, mind, spirit, entity. But once we start using language like being, we're putting conditional language on something that is unconditional, and that's called idolatry. And so it gets real messy real fast. So like for me, if you want to know, I'm a panentheist. So I believe God is the universe. The universe is in God. God is in the universe. So God is the universe plus something, and is no less than personal thing that we can experience, that I do think loves and cares for the universe. I think that is true.
So he loves and cares for the universe enough to send his own son, which becomes an actual person that has these experiences. And the reason he did that is so we might not perish. So what does that mean to you? Like, you have to believe in this God in order not to perish? And what does perish mean?
No, so I am a religious pluralist. So I don't think you have to be a Christian to be saved or something like that. But again, then we have to talk about what it means to be saved.
What it means not to perish.
Not to perish. Yeah. So how I would talk about that is that there are better and worse ways to live in the world. And when you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And so I think part of the wisdom tradition of Christianity, part of what Jesus is teaching, the way, is Jesus's way of seeing and understanding this is a healthy way to live in the world that doesn't lead to human pain and suffering, but rather to flourishing.
So that's what perish means. And when you don't believe in him, you don't live the best and you perish. Perish simply means an ethereal way of, hey, you got bad things coming.
I mean, I don't think it's that simple, because then again, like, there are people outside of the Christian tradition who are flourishing and do really great stuff, and are good, kind, loving, generous people. Most of the time better than a lot of Christians that I know.
But the text actually makes a qualifier. Whoever believes in him will not perish. So according to that verse, if you don't believe in him, you will perish. So how is it possible that according to your definition of perishing, anybody who doesn't believe in him can be doing good things?
Yeah, because again, I'm not this is where I'm confusing. I'm not beholden to the text in the same way. I'm not reading the Bible as if it is this literal word of God that was like, written out because God whispered in Paul's ear and then he wrote some shit down. Like, I think, again, the Bible is a book of wisdom that we engage with. It's an ongoing conversation of people interacting with whom they say is Yahweh, and documenting their ongoing experiences as a people. And I think Jesus was very much a part of that tradition.
So if you basically get to pick and choose what you want the Bible to say,
everybody picks and chooses what the Bible says.
Yeah. So how can you possibly call any of it Christianity? Because how can you possibly have any sort of standard by which to define the religion if everybody's just saying, I like that and I don't like that?
What? So again, like, religion is another modern concept of trying to reify something and put something in a box and say that's what this thing is. But experientially, that's not how religion operates. Like, people have been religious before they could speak. And it seems to be something that has continuously been chosen and selected for in evolution because of the pro-social benefits that are included. And so, I don't know. I forget what your question was.
I get that you can be religious and do what you're doing. What I don't get is how you can be a Christian and do what you're doing.
Because Christianity is the orienting tradition that I grew up in and am a part of. Because of my thrownness in the world, I was a Christian. It's the tradition that I find most compelling. Love is my matter of ultimate concern. And when I think about love, I think about the person of Jesus. And so for me, being Christian is following the way of Jesus. But again, that's a wisdom call.
So if you saw some people having a garage sale at church and using unjust scales? Is it a good idea to go and start whipping them and throwing tables around? Or do you not love that part of the Bible and you just throw that away too?
No, I mean, I have some Anabaptist-y tendencies, so I'm kind of a proponent of nonviolence. But also that gets challenged and called out of me when I, talk to my friends who live on the margins of society and point out to me like, wait a minute, Josh, you're like a privileged white dude who doesn't have to deal with like racism and oppression. And so sometimes in order for things to get done, tables need to be flipped. And like, I think that's a really good point. And so that makes me uncomfortable. And so then I wrestle with that, and I wrestle with my friends who challenge me in that way of being. But I still think we're wrestling within the same kind of tradition. And for me, it's not so much having the answers, but the questions that are the most important.
But I think they're talking metaphorically. I'm actually talking about the literal story. And you said you're a follower of Jesus and would do the things of Jesus. And if that's loving, then you should do that. And I'm not talking metaphorically. I mean, quite literally. Sure.
Yeah, go flip tables.
Yeah, no, and take a whip and whip the people too. Like,
well, Jesus never, in the text, it never says Jesus hit anybody with the whip. It says that Jesus used the whip to drive people out. So I don't think, now we can interpret it.
I'm pretty sure even if you walk in with a gun, even if you don't shoot people, so,
yeah. No, I agree. I'm splitting hairs with you. It is a fair interpretation to read it the way that you're doing, but I don't think it's necessary.
But even so, let's pretend like he's not whipping the people. It's still an illegal action to take something and start whipping it around to scare people away. Like you would be arrested for that. And yet we call that love.
I mean, depending on what you're standing up for, sure, it can be loving.
Okay. So you would do that?
Yeah. If necessary, sure.
Okay. Interesting.
So, I want to change the subject just a little bit.
Protest is the voice of the voiceless.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I want to keep going. I want to change the subject just a little bit here because, I mean, this is kind of confusing for me. You mentioned evolution a few minutes ago, and I'm curious what your belief is on the origin of life. Is it something that evolved, like in the mainstream model of evolution? Do you affirm that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with like the current scientific understanding of evolution. Okay,
so what's wrong with the theory that human consciousness and self-awareness is simply a side effect of an evolving brain, and there is no truth, there is no metaphysics. It's just this misstep in evolution, struggling really hard to understand itself in the universe, but there isn't anything underneath it.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the reductionistic materialist perspective. And then once we get into like philosophy of mind and the hard problem of consciousness, I think reductionistic materialism is incapable of explaining consciousness. And like even, I mean, someone like an atheist like Thomas Nagel says as much, right? His whole bit about like, oh, we have this pesky thing called subjectivity and what it's like to be a bat. Like we don't have access to that. And so our reductionistic materialist framework is incapable of capturing the breadth of reality. And so it's an inadequate system rather. But then you have the other people who are like, okay, well, it has to be mind-body dualism then, right? So there's consciousness and there's also matter. But then the issue is, how do you get these two things to talk to one another? And there's like, again, no real, no leeway there. It doesn't really work. And so for me, in my perspective, what I find most compelling is panpsychism, although I would prefer to call it pan-experientialism because people often conflate consciousness with experience when you say panpsychism, and I'm not comfortable doing that. So I want to say instead that experience is fundamental to reality, and it goes all the way down. So the smallest entities, quark, quasar, whatever, have experience. It's not consciousness. It's not complex like you and I. But as evolution happens, consciousness becomes this kind of emergent property of a complexification of systems. So like that's how I would want to talk about it. And like the reason that I get hung up on just the materialistic aspect is because if we just take like 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 1, we all know that's bullshit. So I don't know how consciousness can evolve out of dead matter. I think experience kind of has to go all the way down. And so that's a part of, pan-experientialism is a part of my process framework.
Okay. So I just don't see any evidence that tells me anything different than consciousness is an emergent property of the brain itself. Like it's simply it's a physical process. I can't find evidence for anything outside of that, except just how I feel. But that's going to lead me into all kinds of weird stuff, which is I kind of feel like that's where we're at in this conversation. You kind of like just making up whatever feels good to you, what you think kind of explains it, when maybe it's just an emergent property of a physical organ, and there's nothing else there. I don't have evidence outside of that for anything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, you're asking a philosophical question, not a scientific one, and so then you have to go to the philosophical literature and see how people are debating it. Like panpsychism is currently on the rise. It's like it got made fun of kind of at first because, again, people conflated it with saying that like the tree outside is conscious, and if you say "fuck you, tree," that now the tree is sad or something. But that's not what they're doing. And so think of someone like Phil Goff, and his book Galileo's Error is fantastic. And he has a new book out called Why. That's really good. I had him on the podcast to talk about that. But like, he's an atheist panpsychist who now is coming to kind of feel like maybe there is something greater, like some kind of ultimate reality, which also
again,
thing in the scientific community as well.
Again, you're saying feel, and so panpsychism is on the rise. Well, I mean, everything at some point is on the rise or on the decline. Like, it doesn't mean that it's actually true.
Sure. I agree.
So, I mean, the problem is philosophy is only useful to us when it functions within reality.
Yeah, of course.
And reality is determined by science because currently that's the only method by which we can determine reality, because so far we haven't been able to produce a method that can tell us anything about the metaphysical, but we don't like that term anymore. Let's use the spiritual or the supernatural.
So I don't believe in supernatural.
Would you believe in God?
God, but God is a natural aspect of the universe.
Oh, he's natural. So everything to you is natural. I'm a naturalist, so theoretically, I would have no problem with your thought, except some of the ideas Whitehead added to it, and you might be adding to it, is the idea that it's a conscious thing and it's behind it and it's directing, or it's giving and knows all the paths, and it predicts them and gives people. Those are all agent terms, and I see no reason to believe that there's any sort of an agent functioning behind the scenes in all of this. That's an idea you're throwing in there with no evidence whatsoever, because we can't verify that.
Well, so I think for me, the evidence is my human experience. I experience goodness, beauty, truth as
sure,
real.
And you experience them, but you're attributing them to something you can't verify.
Well, I'm just saying that in my philosophical system, if I can't capture the depth of my experience, then my system is inadequate. And so I need to be able to explain, like, for example, this conversation. I think like truth matters, and I think you guys do too. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this podcast, right? So truth is real. And I'm like, great, I want truth to be real.
It just matters to us. I mean, that doesn't mean that it's some kind of transcendent, metaphysic. It's just like, right. I care about it because, I have to interact with the world.
Yeah.
I can't like, drill down and give you some kind of more universal concept. Like, I don't believe that truth is like a real thing. It's subjective to, like you said, to our experiences, but that's something that goes away when you die. I mean, it's not like it's not transcendent.
Yeah, so that's probably one thing that we would disagree on then, because I would want to say something like value is real. That value is built into the fabric of the universe. Like, again,
when you say real, do you mean something you perceive or something that's like this?
No, I think I experience value, and I think value is built into the fabric of reality. Like, I think so. Again, this is where the process thought comes in. The telos, the goal of the universe, is the production of beauty, novelty, and the intensification of experience. And so that's a process claim. That's a philosophical claim that I'm making that I think you two probably both disagree with. And that's where some of our like where we end up talking past each other.
Right.
Because like, you're assuming reductionistic materialism. I'm doing the process thing, and then we go.
No, I'm not a materialist, so that's not
Okay.
at all what I'm assuming. I actually don't always know all the answers. That's why I'm not going to say definitively wrong. I'm saying I have no reason to think what you're suggesting is true because you're just making assertions. Like you said that value is something that's inherent in and as real as this, but in the universe. If that were true, then you and I would have the same exact perspective on value. We would think the same things are valuable, and yet I guarantee you we don't.
Why would you assume that we would think they're all the same? Why would you assume that we would?
Because things in reality are only one. Like I have a light here. You would say it's a light. This is a cup. This is toilet paper. Like we're not going to debate these things because we know what they are.
Sure.
But value, beauty, these are things that are personal. They are things that are subjective. They are not things grounded in reality.
Yeah, but they're still a part of our experience. And so like all I'm saying is that I'm open to possibility. Because when I think about, so like, I don't know, I don't have kids yet, but like, I think one day when I hold my child, that experience is not going to be able to be explained or reduced to a logical syllogism. Like logic is great and it does a lot of really important things for us, but it is incapable of capturing the rest of reality. And so for Whitehead, what he's doing, he uses this airplane metaphor that I find very helpful. He recognizes that we start on the ground with experience, and then we have to take off and fly around. And this word might be scary, but use our imaginations, get creative, try to describe reality in the best way that we can, but then we still have to come back down to experience and land that plane. And so I'm not making any strict Josh is right, everyone else is wrong claims. What I'm trying to do is say, oh, wow, for me, I found process thought to be internally consistent and parsimonious, make sense of my experience, and it gives me a rational way of being in the world that can capture, things like science, religious experience, love, these kind of things. And so it's not so much for me like I need Alan and Elliot to agree with me, but like I think I have a rational, coherent system that functions well. And that's, how I interact with reality.
So I understand what you're saying, and I agree up to this point.
Okay.
I'd ask you. So you talk about value being transcendent.
Mm-hmm.
If every living thing in the universe suddenly died, would there still be value?
I would say yes. Because there is intrinsic value in because again, for me, my ontology is event based. And so each moment of becoming is like a drop of experience. And so experience is inherent in reality itself. And so there would still be inherent value even if people were not here. So this is a non-anthropocentric
but who would be experiencing it though? Who would that value be to?
So whatever it is, when the divine aspect, ultimate reality, but then also the rest of the universe, because again, everything has intrinsic value.
Do you think everything is conscious, even if it's not a mind?
No, I would say everything is experiential, but not conscious. Consciousness is like a complex form of experience.
I'm struggling with this because if we erased all minds in the universe, we just had like space rocks. Like, are they able to value experience in reality?
So not in the way that you and I do. It's not conscious, but so this is where like David Hume comes in, because
Real quick, sorry, don't mean to interrupt. How do you know they're not conscious?
How do I know the rock's not conscious?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't experienced a rock like talking to me or making decisions or anything like that.
All right. So subjectively, you're deciding that a rock is not conscious.
It appears, based off my empirical investigation into the rock, it does not appear to be.
Sorry, go back to the correct answer. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, no, you're good. So anyway, David Hume's whole bit was like that the only way we have access to reality is through sensory perception. Whitehead rejects that and says that's obviously not the case. There are things we know that are not brought to us in our five senses. And then he talks about this word he uses called prehension, and says that in each moment of becoming, we prehend the past and also prehend future possibilities. So this is subconscious, non-conscious experiential data coming into humans, which I think is a fair thing to say scientifically these days. And so like that feeling aspect also goes all the way down. So like the elements that make up that space rock flying, they are prehending, they have prehensive experience as well. But they're not conscious, but there's still like, again, the intrinsic value, because each experience is a value experience within Whitehead's framework.
So I don't want to be like too blunt here, but
yeah,
it's to me it just sounds like Whitehead's making stuff up.
I mean, I wouldn't say that's fair, because he's deeply empirical and is trying to capture the reality of all human experience. But again,
well, human experience, like you're adding this extra human experience to, you know, objects, physical objects without minds. I don't see that at all. That's where I say he's just making it up, because like it's just so weird.
Here's my beat. Like, let's just say on the odd chance that Whitehead's right, it would be a guess. And that's the point that Eliot's making, is there's nothing to demonstrate that anything he's saying is true. It's just, this sounds great. But that's fine. It's like the same thing for God. If there is a God that exists, you got lucky, because there's no reason for you to believe it.
Well, I think so. Here's part of the thing. So like from a phenomenological perspective, like Husserl talked about all things, it's like the principle of principles. All things that are evidential count as evidence, right? So that's Husserl's bit. And then the problem is, from like our own experience, we all bring our own a priori commitments to this conversation. So in my reality, I am open, like God is a thing, a possibility. But for someone who's an atheist, God is not a possibility. And so the things then, because of our framework, that we would count as experience.
Not true at all, dude. That wasn't a true statement at all.
All right, well, then that's fine. But so then regardless, though, I still think it's true that what we would count as evidential is going to be different based off of a priori commitments.
So what are your a priori commitments?
I'm assuming the process framework.
Okay. And I'm assuming materialism. So we're like at a brick wall.
We're assuming naturalism. So here we are.
We're all going to talk past each other. It's very frustrating and confusing, but that's why it's fun. Because like,
fun, but that's the whole thing is like, why are like I'm trying to just base my life on things that I can know for certain. And frankly, that even has a presupposition that we're not just brains in a vat, and, you know, and that this is reality that we live in. So I'm starting off right there with a presupposition that I think we all have to, because otherwise, if we don't have that presupposition, then we can't even have a conversation, honestly. So, I mean, that's just an honest presupposition that we all share. But beyond that required presupposition, why leap to conclusions that have no grounds to believe, no evidence to substantiate? And by that, I don't mean evidence that's consistent with the claim, because you can make claims and by all intents and purposes appear as though they match your evidence, but your evidence could also demonstrate 50 other possibilities also. So like the thing for an intelligent designer, for example, you know, if intelligent design were true and we could prove that unequivocally, that still doesn't prove it's God. It just means that it's some intelligence. So that piece of evidence demonstrates that it could be a million things. It doesn't prove this one. So
sure,
why leap to conclusions that it is this when we don't know that it is this? Instead, why don't we say, hey, this is one possibility, but I don't know, and I can't say it is, and I'm not going to live my life like that because I have no way of proving it.
Yeah. So again, for me, it's going to come down to what counts as evidence. Like, I think to only look at like what can be empirically and scientifically verified as like that's the only thing that counts as evidence in life, I think that's an extraordinarily narrow way of viewing reality that is incapable of capturing like even just human experience. And so all I'm trying to do is take my human experience seriously and offer an understanding that captures those things. And go ahead.
I was going to say, so it sounds to me like what you're defining as evidence is otherwise known as faith.
No, because I'm talking about things like love. Love is not, you cannot capture love in like with the reductionistic materialism. I can't capture the feeling that I have for my wife, you know, when you make love and have eye contact within some kind of logical syllogism. Like, it's just a very narrow way of looking at the world. So I want to expand that and say, oh, as a human being who is not an exception to the universe, but is an exemplification of it, I can use my experience to tell me something true about the universe because I fucking grew out of the universe. I am a product of it. And so I need to be able to capture those things. So that's what I'm trying to do. And it's not like a finalized thing.
And I see that that's a very interesting idea. And it's fun to ponder and think about and let our minds roam, because that's how theories end up arriving to begin with. So, and propositions. So that's all fine and good. But to take the step and say, and I land here, the problem with that is it's influencing the way you think about other things like Christianity. It's affecting the fact that you now also believe in a God and in a Jesus who did whatever. And it becomes very ethereal. And so you pretty much make up whatever you want about life, and you land and you say, hey, I'm a Christian. And we're just like, wow, where'd that come from? So it does affect every area of your life.
Sure.
Well, what it sounds like is you talk about evidence, but what it sounds like is the only thing that really counts for you as evidence is your experience.
No, it would be the foundation. My experience would be the foundation. But I believe in empirical science and all of those kind of things.
But those are subject to your experience, it sounds like.
I mean, they would be, yeah. Like everything is subject to our experience. We're experiencing.
Okay, so
I don't know the.
So what was your experience that convinced you of this on your way out of mainstream Christianity? Did you have some kind of experience?
Do you mean like a religious experience or?
I guess.
No, I think the God of classical theism sucks and it doesn't make any sense. If God is so the problem of evil is a huge issue for me. And I think that destroys classical theism. Like, if God is all powerful and all loving, and then you know how the problem works. I think that's like a really good argument. And I think all of the best arguments against the belief in God assume omnipotence. I reject omnipotence. So I don't have that problem within my conception of the divine. And the reason I came to that was, one, because of the problem of evil, but then also because of my experience. Like, in the past, when I have done things such as like meditation or experienced transcendence, I've always experienced a feeling of love and belonging and acceptance. And so for me, then I'd be like, okay, if I can't say God is love without having to cross my fingers, then I don't have any good reason to believe in God. And for me, process thought is like the best version. Like, I'm not sure God exists. This is, I like to talk with Alan about this too. Like, I'm not convinced that God is real, but on days when I am, process thought is the framework that makes the most sense for me. And so then I continue to stick around with the Christian stuff for existential reasons. Like, again, it's the tradition I grew up in. For me, my definition of faith is different than Alan's. I pull from my buddy Aaron Simmons, who is a phenomenologist and Kierkegaard scholar, and describes faith as risk in a direction. And then I pull in Paul Tillich, who was a German theologian who critiqued the Nazis, which is always good in my book. And he says, faith is our matter of ultimate concern. So everybody has faith in something. And I bring those together and say, what is my matter of ultimate concern? What is worthy of my finitude? It's love. So for me, my faith is risking myself in the direction of love. And I personally find the teachings of Jesus compelling and loving. And so I risk myself in that direction. But then anytime, again, I'm standing within a tradition, but I'm not a blind adherent to it. Anytime I see something that doesn't look like love or doesn't look like Jesus, then I feel comfortable critiquing it and saying it's not good or not true or something like that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It does make sense, but you did say that everybody has faith in something. So I would ask, like, what do you think that I have faith in?
What's your matter of ultimate concern?
I don't really have one.
Then I don't know. That's interesting to me. Then, because I think, like, I mean, it can be like literally anything. Like, we all care about something. Like, maybe you care, maybe for you it's like philosophy or your family, or I don't know, maybe like dogs a lot or something, like hiking or whatever.
I don't think I need faith for any of that stuff.
Well, I'm not defining faith as like belief in something that we don't see or whatever. I'm talking about,
so
yeah.
we could use a different word and it would make more sense, perhaps.
Yeah, matter of ultimate concern is Tillich's notion.
Okay.
But
yeah, I guess I don't really have one.
Yeah, I think the notion of risk is interesting to me, because I still think, like, and maybe you guys are not going to like this, so forgive me, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I think it's really cool that there are people who are able to live faithfully as atheists, because I still think, even if we're not willing to admit it, we still have to take some kind of leap to get to atheism, because we don't have objective, certain empirical evidence that God does not exist.
That's two different things.
Yeah, you keep doing that, and this is what so many people do not understand atheism at all, and they make claims about atheism. Atheism is not a leap in any direction. Atheism is the default position when you don't believe a God exists, because there's not evidence for it. We're not making claims there is no God, you'll never prove it, we're for sure there isn't. We just, to this point, have no reason to believe there is. Therefore, because we don't hold to a God, therefore not making us theists, we have no choice to be atheists. It's not a position. It's not a worldview. It's not something we're chasing. Just here we are because we haven't seen substantial evidence for a God. And even today, all we have is the assertions. Well, my experience tells me there must be some being that does this and that, and we call him God. I'm like, okay, so first of all, why call him God? Second of all, why does your experience tell you that there's a being? It could just be your experience. How do you know? Like, there's a lot of just leaps here, and atheism isn't the one. Atheists aren't one making the leap. We're just sitting here saying, "Tell us how."
Right.
Here is leaps.
I could say I don't necessarily hold to this view, but I could very easily say the non-existence of God for me is self-evident. It's axiomatic. I don't have to have faith in that. All I got to do is just look around or go off of my personal experience. I don't experience a God. I don't see a God. I see no evidence for a God. It's self-evident that there is no God.
Right.
And it's not a faith-based statement.
And all of the apologetics that have attempted to prove the existence of God have failed miserably.
Oh, boy, I don't like apologetics. I think apologetics is insufferable.
Right, but that's and that's the interesting thing, is that if every one of them fails, then all of the evidence that supposedly proves the existence of God fails, and therefore I have no reason to be a theist. I have to be an atheist by default.
Yeah. No, I understand that. So that's my bad then for mischaracterizing your position. If you just kind of see it as self-evident. Yeah, but I don't know. So then if you're not making the strong claim there is for sure no God, then that the faith bit wouldn't apply.
Yeah, there's two fields of atheism. There's weak and strong, or soft and hard. And hard atheism or strong atheism says there is no God, and the counter to that is soft atheism, which is just I don't see any evidence for it. I can't assume that it exists.
Right. Typically, it's also Gnostic atheism versus agnostic atheism.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, what? Because when I think of like what you're describing, I think more of like agnostic, like that compared to atheist. So it was just like a confusion of terms for me, I guess.
Well, no, just atheism in general is just the default position, like we're claiming.
Okay.
There are those that came along and now they're trying to, and they're adding, we know for sure there is no God that exists. And here's the thing. The problem is there are times where I will say, yeah, no God exists. I will make the affirmative claim.
Sure.
But that is simply because there's a claim that's being made, a God exists, there's no evidence, so therefore I have no problem saying, okay, no God exists because there's no evidence for it. But it's not the same thing as making an assertion that I can prove no God exists, because I can't prove God doesn't exist any more than you can seemingly prove one does. Mm-hmm. So we're in a stalemate. And so I sit here and I say, okay, well, I'm just going to rest comfortably in the position that doesn't have to prove anything, whereas you're in a position that is left having to prove your claim and yet to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I I don't know. I don't necessarily feel the need to prove God exists. I think it's because I like process philosophy and some kind of ultimate reality is necessitated, then like it is a function of the system that I like. And that's the one, when I look at different ways of seeing the world, this is the one that makes the most sense to me and is able to capture everything for me. But like, as you know, I love radical theology, which is like God doesn't exist within that framework. So it's kind of atheistic in that sense. And that I kind of use that to balance myself. I think there's something interesting, the dialectic between those two traditions. I think something happens there that is exciting to me.
Well, the good news is you can actually merge both your systems just by eliminating God out of Whitehead's philosophy, because you don't need it in that philosophy. Just call it something else, and you could remain an atheist perpetually. I've just saw
Roland Faber tried to do Whitehead without God and like spent a long time on it and was like, yeah, it doesn't work. If you're going to be a process, you need to have the ultimate reality bit. But Caputo, who is like my favorite radical theologian, would say like, yeah, I like process thought without all the metaphysics, because he's a deconstructive theologian. He's working, he's basically appropriating Jacques Derrida and Derrida's notion of the unconditional and naming that as God, but there's no existence. Like God is structurally impossible.
A lot of postmodern thinking here going on.
Yeah. That's Caputo's whole bit.
So back to the Christianity thing, because it all affects everything. Unless you wanted to touch on this some more, Elliot, before I moved on.
Well, I wanted to get into like some more personal questions, but we can do that for later.
Okay, we'll get back to it. So let me give you a kind of an analogy here, and this is going to be dramatic, like a really drastic analogy, because I think I do think it fits. Not that I'm paralleling the evils of Christianity with the evils of sex trafficking. So I'm going to use a parallel, but I by no means although I think there's a lot of evils that are in Christianity, like I think throughout the Old Testament, I think there's a lot of advocation for child molestation, and it makes me sick. So maybe it's not that far off after all. But let's just you're saying this version of Christianity has a lot of problems. So I've invented this version of Christianity, but there's parts in each that are good, parts are not. So somehow they merge in some ways or whatever. But you see problems with this one, and this one has a lot of evils to it, like the belief in child molestation or advocation for slavery, or what's that?
Genocide,
or even substitutionary atonement, penal sacrifice, sinners, evil, like all these things you think are detrimental to people. Like these are just terrible ideas that hurt people. And as a Christian, you're still advocating for Christianity, therefore saying, hey, in a way, you're supporting this version of Christianity by virtue of the fact that you're still a Christian, even though you're claiming there are problems with it. But it doesn't matter, because they still get to say, yeah, but we're all just Christians, and so you're just a different version. So let's say I come along and I say, man, I got a lot of problems with sex trafficking. But you know what? I have a whole different version of sex trafficking, one that's way better. By sex, I literally just mean male and female. And by trafficking, I mean making sure cars don't run into each other on the street. And I have a male on this corner and a female on that corner, and they're trafficking. And I call that sex trafficking. And I come out and say, hey, I just have a different version of sex trafficking, but I'm going to continue to use the same term because I like it. And I'm going to be a part of this. I am still connecting and advocating for sex trafficking by using the term. And even if I'm calling it evil, there's still an association there. And why would you want to say, I'm a sex trafficker and I'm proud of it? That's just weird. But that's essentially what you're doing with Christianity. You got all these things that are pretty much evil about it, and yet you're coming along and saying, oh, I'm a Christian and I'm just proud of it. That just doesn't add up, man.
Well, I mean, I think the conflation between the two doesn't quite work, but I think your point is well taken. And it's also, I mean, it's why I don't often go around presenting myself as calling myself a Christian, because of all of the baggage that I want to avoid. So when I do end up using that word, I have to be very careful how I'm using it and define it, which again, it goes to your point, is problematic. But I think that's going to be the truth in general. Like if it is factual that I'm an American, but that doesn't mean that I support the fucking crazy shit that our government's currently doing. But I am an American, so like it's still kind of the same thing.
That's a great point.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think again for me, it comes back to Gadamer and that notion of critiquing the system from within. Like I think modern white Western evangelical Christianity is so far removed from anything that meaningfully can be called Jesus follower, that like I am comfortable expelling that version. And like that's what I want to push back against is like absolutely that's evil and terrible and wrong. And anytime that a religious system is used to justify the oppression of other people, the enslavement of people, the abuse of children, I think all of that is bad, evil, and wrong. And so for me, again, it comes down to like, I guess my core values, or like what I like, even if we can argue if values are true or not, but I think like the three of us, we probably all have some similar things that we want in the world. Like we want to be left alone and for our families to be safe, our children to be safe, for us to like, have access to freedom and the pursuit of happiness and to flourish. And so like, I get excited to hang out with people like you, even if we disagree theologically on if there's God or Christian or whatever, because my core values are shared with you. And that's to me an expression of my Christianity, not a like middle finger to it. So like I can't escape my thrownness in the world. I feel like I'm always tied, because even when I define myself against the tradition, I'm still tied to the tradition I grew up in. I can't escape it. I feel stuck. So I don't know. I'm just rambling about why I like you guys.
When you reference white American Christianity,
sure,
what is different about that than the Christianity, mainstream Christianity that you find anywhere else in the world?
I mean, so global Christianity is going to be totally different based off context. Although American evangelicalism, unfortunately, is exported, into many different countries today. But like the Christian tradition is, I mean, it's so vastly different. Like most of my critiques of evangelical Christianity is not just me making stuff up; it's coming from other parts of the tradition. So like within Eastern Orthodox, for example, if I walked into an evangelical church today and said, "Oh, the hope and good news of Christianity is that one day I too can be like God," I would get fucking stoned. But theosis, the idea that we become gods, is the literal teaching of the Eastern Orthodox Church. So like, what do we do with that? There's a wide variety of differences, but within American Christianity specifically, what I would critique is its tie into conservative right-wing politics. That's a huge one.
But if we split off the political aspect of American Christianity from
sure.
American Christianity, I don't know if it's right to marry those two necessarily. A social political movement is not the same as like the doctrines found in the fundamentals.
Sure.
Because those have been going on for a lot longer than this strange version of Christian nationalism in America, which is, I mean, maybe hasn't been going on for more than a few decades.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. But that's a version of Christianity I'm critiquing. Like that's part of the version that I left, I guess, which is why I'm focused on it. Like when I deconstructed, that's the version of Christianity that I left behind. Because that's what I grew up in. But I think, I mean, just like sociologically, we see it has shifted. Like religion within this country used to kind of be the primary motivating factor for someone's political affiliation, but that is actually flipped. People make theological choices based off their politics nowadays. And I think that's deeply problematic.
Well, it's kind of that. I would say that's like way overgeneralizing. Because I grew up maybe in a conservative Republican home, but our religious beliefs were separate from what we were doing as far as social issues.
Sure.
Like you could hack off all the. You could hack off. Well, shifted. In your opinion, That's a gross generalization though, because there's a lot of people in the U.S. that are evangelical Christians that like maybe are not political, or they separate the two.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling that generalization from the research of Ryan Burge, who's like the leading religion philosopher, like working multi-million-dollar Templeton Foundation grants, like empirical research. That's where I'm pulling that from.
When did this start though? When did this trend start?
Probably back, so like, I don't know, when fundamentalists did like their whole like rebranding exercise to become kind of like evangelical, non-denominational vibe. So like the 70s, maybe. I'm thinking people of like the Jerry Falwells of the world, and like that kind of expression. But like, anyway, I mean, we're like chasing rabbits, because your point is well taken. That's not, I'm critiquing one particular expression of Christianity. Gotcha. But yeah.
So I know in the past you have expressed to me that, and I assume this is still true, correct me if you've changed your perspective on this, but the reason you choose to remain a Christian is so that you can infiltrate from the inside, whereas I'm trying to attack it from the outside. Is that still where you are?
I don't know. I honestly, dude, this is a very live question for me, which is why, again, I like talking to people like you guys to push me on why do I still stick around with these things. But I do think there is something to be said about critiquing a system from within, because if I think it is true both that Christianity has done tremendous harm and evil in this world, and Christianity has done really good and beautiful things in this world. I think both of those things are true. Or like my buddy Dan uses this helpful metaphor that religion is like nuclear fission. And so nuclear fission can do really great stuff, or it can blow up the whole fucking world. And so it depends on whose hands it's in. And so if we just all retreat and pull out of these traditions that like wield massive power, that have the ability to oppress people and like move political agendas and all this kind of stuff, and just say like, yep, okay, you guys can have this now, I think that's a betrayal of the tradition itself. And I also think it's like kind of irresponsible. Now, I don't think that's for everybody. I don't think everybody has that, is going to want to sit in there and do that, but it is somewhat of a motivating factor.
Well, I mean, I couldn't personally sit in there and do it, not simply because I despise the religion, but because as an atheist, I mean, it would be pretty apparent very quickly that I'm just kind of in there infiltrating, and not sure I'd have much of a voice if they knew where I stood. They were just kind of like, oh, that's just Alan, just doing his thing. So, I mean, you'd have to actually believe the stuff in order for you to actually have a voice in a system like that.
I mean, I know like plenty of clergy members who are basically atheist, but that find the tradition existentially meaningful and beautiful, and so they participate in it because it can bring positive effects in someone's life. And so like you don't necessarily have to believe to participate.
You just have to be dishonest.
What sort of clergy are they?
Priests, pastors.
You just have to be dishonest with your church.
But it's, again, maybe not, because it comes down to the question of what kind of truth are we talking about. So like if we're talking about like propositional truth, did Jesus actually walk on water? And then you get up and preach a sermon. I don't know that happened, but that doesn't mean I can't preach a sermon that is true based off of that illustration.
That's not the same thing as saying you're an atheist and staying a pastor.
Right. Why not? Why cannot? And there's plenty of, like, Bart Ehrman's a great Bible scholar, but he's an atheist.
Yeah, but
like,
he's not a Christian.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Can't pastor a church, dude. That's a shepherd that guides people's hearts.
This is why I'm curious what sort of clergy that are atheistic, or what, like, more specifically, not just priests or pastors, but are we talking like Baptists or
I know some like some Episcopalians, some Lutherans.
Well, that's not surprising.
Some Methodists.
Any fundamentalists?
Of course not, because fundamentalism it's not going to work that way. Like fundamentalism is so, I get so frustrated with fundamentalists, which is why I don't understand how you guys are able to talk to them. Because
they're easier to argue with.
They're easier to argue
than a process theologian.
They're like fish.
They have a foundation.
Yeah, but their system, like the circular logic bothers me, and like but like fundamentalists don't allow anything from outside of their system to penetrate their system, where I'm like, hey, science is great. We should actually consider these things. So like when you guys did the presuppositionalist thing the other day, I was trying to watch it and I like was getting so frustrated. And I was like, how are Alan and Elliot being so like patient?
We talk to them because that's where we came from. So
Sure.
if we were ex-Muslims, we would be talking to Muslims and trying to reason with them. So your version of Christianity is so foreign to me that I honestly don't recognize it, and it's not the kind of people that I like choose to talk to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. I mean, I like, if you had to classify me, I fit into like kind of like mainline Protestant, Episcopalian. Like when I go to church, it's an Episcopalian church. And that's a big if and when.
So the reason I was asking my question about whether or not you're still there is
sure.
I'm curious what. So we've attempted to define classic theism, classic Christianity. We've attempted to define what traditional Christianity is. I guess what I'm curious about, and maybe you can help us here to better understand, how would you define your version of Christianity in a way that people could say, oh, that's the system, I like that one. And then after you define that, I want to understand, what is your draw to it? Why are you so compelled to continue as a Christian if it's not just to infiltrate from the inside? But if it is just to infiltrate from the inside, then I guess you've already answered that.
Yeah. So it's going to be an existential reasoning. So for me, when I say I'm a Christian, what I mean by that is I do my best to follow the teachings of Jesus according to how they were written in the New Testament, right? I'm very much aware they're not the actual words of Jesus, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So I that's how I define myself as a Christian, one who follows Jesus, or Christ follower is actually how I prefer to talk about it. Jesus follower, Jesus adherent. And so I like things like the Sermon on the Mount. And like, I just find that as like a compelling ethical framework that, kind of flips a lot of power structures in the world on their head, that is rooted in love, and, hopefully try to live accordingly. But then when I talk about the existential part, and this is why I think there's like different kinds of truth. When I go to Theology Beer Camp, for example, this is a group of theological misfits. So like imagine 600 annoying people like me that like can't be backed into a corner, all coming together, still somehow around, like, they're like, I don't know that we can do this whole God thing, but there still seems to be something about like transcendence and beauty and justice that I want to be true. And then I enter into community with these people, and engage them based out of the values that I found in my interaction with the person of Jesus. Something happens. My experience is positive. It's true. Like, there is goodness there. There is beauty. There is understanding. There is belonging. And so my lived experience shows me, when I apply these teachings, they are true. But that's not propositional truth. That's an existential kind of vibe, which is then why, again, like, I'm never going to feel comfortable telling a Buddhist that their religion is bullshit, because I didn't grow up a Buddhist. I don't have access to the experiential reality of being a Buddhist, living into that, way of being in the world, and then saying it's not true. Same with like my Muslim friends or Jewish friends or Hindus or whatever. Like, I don't have access to that. So that's I think a big part of it for me, is because of the community of belonging that I find. And it does look different. To your point, there are many people are not comfortable calling me a Christian, or they get upset with me because they're, of all the various like social things I care about. Like, Theology Beer Camp, for example, LGBTQ affirming, big time. Like, we have trans scholars and philosophers, theologians, ministers that come and speak there, and queer communities, like all this kind of stuff. So there is a more beautiful way to faithfully inhabit a tradition that recognizes its roots and calls out all the bullshit in it and participates anyway. Like, I don't know. It's but I think belonging maybe is where it comes down to for me.
So I mean, would you not agree that there are a lot of really good things that Muhammad said as well?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are good things within the Islamic faith, and there's also really bad things that I'm not a fan of.
Sure. So why don't you also call yourself a Muslim?
Because that's not my orienting tradition. That's not my experience.
So you're just holding on to it because that's just what you were raised in.
Yes and no. It's a framework that I know of that experientially has meaning.
But it's not, because you've completely redefined the entire framework. So you've just essentially done the same thing as becoming a Muslim.
I mean, I still think that all of this stuff, like I didn't pull it out of my ass. I mean, my metaphysical foundation, yes. But again, Christianity doesn't have an inherent metaphysic. It's a religion in search of a metaphysic, where something like Buddhism is a metaphysical tradition in search of a religion. So like, I don't think I'm doing anything sketchy by bringing in a metaphysical position when I reject like, oh, this ancient Greek system seems to be demonstrably false. I need one that makes sense of reality, plug it in. And then I think like science and theology and philosophy, I think they all kind of speak in relation to one another, and we can't shield them. So my theology, my Christianity is going to shift based off what I know of science and based off of philosophy. But also I can use my Christianity to critique the blind spots in, science and philosophy as well. So it's like this interactive, deeply relational system. I don't know. But I probably could I could stop saying I'm a Christian and still exist in the world in the way that I do. Like I will grant you that.
No, I have no doubt you could. Yes, I mean,
yeah.
Something about what you say that is very Christian in my mind to begin with. So,
Sure.
And so earlier you were talking about how Christianity has done a lot of evil in the world, but also have done a lot of good.
Mm-hmm.
So my perspective on that is there are a lot of Christians in the world that have done good and that have helped advance the world, but I don't think it's because they were Christians. I think it's because they were humans and saw a chance to better society. The evils that were done in the world, however, that are done in the name of Christ, I do see influenced by the teaching of the Bible, like slavery, for example, like the Crusades, things that they were able to use and actually did use verses from the Bible to support the actions that they were doing. So I'm inclined to disagree that Christianity is great to hold on to because it's also done good, even though it's done bad. I disagree with that because I think without Christianity, we would have still had the good, but we wouldn't have had the bad.
Yeah, I guess for me it's just difficult to unpair those. Like I think it cuts both ways. Because like, so for example, with the slavery thing, like the whole civil rights movement, who was one of the leading people or groups in the civil rights movement was the Black church. They were Christians fighting against the evils of slavery and oppression in this country, not in spite of their Christianity, but because of it.
Yeah, but it had nothing to do with support from the Bible. They basically did what you're doing. Well, we don't like what that says, so we're going to do our own thing.
What if we rephrase it and I ask, what is a moral act that is only available to a Christian that an atheist could not come up with on their own and implement?
I mean, I don't know if there is one. Like, because I said, I experience most of the time atheists to be like kind, generous, loving people. And it doesn't necessitate like a moral framework for them to do so. But
so what's exclusive to Christianity that I need as far as a moral framework?
I don't think there's anything exclusive to Christianity that would be necessitated for you to have a moral framework. But I think there are things that come from Christianity that are positive.
But not because Christianity, just because people were Christians when they did it.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that there's something to the idea that individuals have inherent worth in life. Like I think that's beautiful. Like the whole even if I don't know this from like a, I don't know, like scientific perspective, but the idea or their conception that like all people are created in the image of God and are therefore worthy of love, value, or that like the truest thing about you is that you're known, seen, and loved by the divine. Those are like positive teachings. I think that's a good thing.
I think I'm valuable too, but I don't need a God for that. And frankly, I think I'm more valuable because I'm valuable in and of myself. I'm not valuable because of some God.
Yeah, no, but that's the inherent
frankly,
value.
I don't get those from Christianity.
Right.
Like I can't extract those things from Christianity.
Yeah, because
myself.
I think the versions of Christianity that you guys grew up in, and myself included, and have rightfully left, like I think the proper moral choice or moral thing to do in light of the versions of Christianity that the three of us came out from, I think atheism is the right way to go morally.
But if I just take the Bible by itself without the baggage of my upbringing and my culture, just using the Bible itself, I have difficulty extracting those things from that.
I mean, I think you find it in the teachings of Jesus. And also, I mean, I think you find it in Torah as well. But then, of course, there's not great stuff in the pages of the Bible that we all know about. We mentioned the genocide, the murder, the rape, the, you know.
But even a good thing from like Jesus' teachings, like I have to take that in and I have to judge that myself using my own reasoning, my own brain to verify that that is in fact a good thing to do. So, and ultimately, I'm still the one doing it.
Yeah, sure. I agree. I think I told Alan about this before. Like my buddy Tripp used to be a UCC minister and he was in LA. So like there's a whole bunch of atheists. And so like a lot of the times people would bring their significant other to church and Tripp would hang out with all like did a class with like all the atheists who were like, I don't buy any of this bullshit. And then he was like, okay, great. We're going to do an experiment in truth. And so what they would do was they would pick one teaching from Jesus. And in this, in this example, he would do the like, don't judge lest you be judged or whatever. And so then they had a group text. And whenever during the week, whenever you judge somebody, you would have to text into the group, hey guys, today I judged Alan, and then you would say, please give me the eyes to see Alan, the way that God does, inherently value, beautiful, whatever. And then they would do that for a week. And again, it was just experiment in the not judge part. And then ultimately what people ended up doing after day 2 or 3 was they would start texting like, today I judged myself. Josh judged Josh, to the group, please give me the eyes to see the way that Josh, that God doesn't, intrinsically valuable and loved, whatever. And so that's like, yeah, of course you have to, there's no like objective point of view from like nowhere. Like you have to take and apply teachings and things. And I think that's part of my point is like experientially, when I risk myself in the direction of love, I find truth and beauty there. Like I find that teaching to be true. I don't want to judge other people.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, because I can take that verse and I can either judge that to be true or I can judge that to be false, but I'm the one that's doing it. Like I don't need that verse. Because I can come to the completely opposite conclusion after reading it. Like I can reject it. So like I'm the ultimate moral standard. I don't need the book at all.
Yeah, you're applying and appropriating the teaching. I don't think I don't need the Bible to tell me things, because again, I view Christianity as a wisdom tradition. It's not a set of propositions that I have to ascribe to. So like when
Okay.
yeah.
But you do need the Bible to give you some really horrid teachings. But that's my point is like you don't need the Bible to determine anything that's good and valuable that you're talking about. We're talking about like I don't need the Bible to tell me I'm worth something. I just believe that for my own self. I don't need the Bible to tell me that it's a bad idea to go and punch you in the face. Like I mean, I don't need the Bible for these things. But if I'm going to follow the Bible and I don't believe slavery is right, if I'm going to follow the Bible, I'm going to end up becoming a slavist, because guess what? The Bible teaches that not only how to do it, but where to get them from and how to do it properly. And, so if I were to travel back in time and live in the time of Israel during the time of slavery, I would be really fucked up in the head, because I'd be like, well, shit, I thought this was a bad thing. I guess I have to do it. And I'd be going backwards in my morality, because now I'm following the teachings of this supposed God. So I think the Bible brings a lot of atrocities that we would not have had the Bible never existed and Christianity was never on the scene. I do think we would have been a much better world without it, and all religion in general, because I think all the atrocities we see come from those not all of them, but the ones that come from religion, we see coming from the Bible themselves. Whereas without those sources, we would actually think much better the way we do now, as more and more people are rejecting.
Yeah, there's a quote, I forget who said it. I'm going to paraphrase it pretty badly here, but it's like to get a good man can do good, but to get a good man to do evil takes religion.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's just true about, like, I think we're talking about people in general. Like, there's of course like plenty, like atheists have done bad stuff too, or like philosophical systems have caused people to do bad things, or like, I don't know, being like a complete and abject nihilist makes people do bad things. But what's crazy though is we're still talking about like goodness and badness. Like there are things that seem to be better or worse in life, and like so like
no, and I'm not disagreeing with that at all. Like you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. There is plenty of atrocities that happen without the religions. I'm simply saying is those religions add to the atrocities, and we'd be better off without them.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, of course, I don't want any of the atrocities.
Right. And we would have I still believe we would have done all the good that we did without the religious portions.
Well, this is the problem with the Bible, is that book has been used for ever since its existence to justify the atrocities. Like it's giving bad people or even good people justification to engage in evil acts. Like it's in my opinion, it's such a poisonous book that we should just get rid of it, throw it out, burn it, whatever, and start over. We don't need it. It only hurts. I just don't see that book helping at all.
Yeah, I think that's too overstated. Like I agree with you that it is used to do atrocious things, but also I think people use it to do good things. And I agree, like I agree with what you're saying about like, oh, I can be a good person, I don't need to ground that morally in scripture. But I think it is also true that there are people who are trying to do good things in the world by, taking care of those on the margins, giving the voice to the voiceless, taking care of homeless people. And they're doing it because of the teachings within the pages of...
No, but see,
they're doing it because of themselves.
Yeah, the point you're missing
is just using the book to justify it.
Right. You don't need a book to justify a good action. Anybody will accept that. But you will need the book to justify the evil actions that it advocates for. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. Get rid of the book and you no longer have a justification for your evil actions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think people are going to have justifications no matter what. Like
Sure.
Yeah, because humans are not rational beings. Humans are deeply emotional beings. We have split-second affective responses, and then our rationality kicks in to justify the emotions that we already think and feel.
I agree with that, but the difference is without the book, we don't have to accept that justification. With the book, Christianity is such an accepted religion. Well, I guess it's okay.
Well, the difference is that with the book, I might have that split-second reaction to do a good or moral thing, but then I read the book or I listen to somebody who's preaching that book, and suddenly, like, I'm doing the wrong thing because I've been convinced that book is actually true.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess that's just true about like, I don't see why it would only apply to the Bible then, because like I could argue that like, right, yeah, okay, then that's fair, because I could argue like, oh, we should get rid of like, I don't know, all the movies that condone violence, or all the video games, or the, whatever music.
Well, there are things in pop culture, like movies, books, whatever, that are bad and and instill problem mind viruses, and we would try to get rid of them. I'm just applying the same standard to the Bible. Like to me, the Bible is a bad movie with bad ideas, and it's causing good people to do bad things. When it causes someone to do a good thing, they're just using that as their justification, but they probably would have done that good thing anyway.
Yeah, I don't know.
This will be a good point to probably draw it to an end. We got to take some of these things from the chat, and then we'll wrap up whatever last minute thoughts you guys may have.
I just wanted to, before we ended, I just wanted to ask Josh, like, what denomination were you before you left mainstream Christianity?
So it's complicated. I grew up Methodist, and then we went to a Southern Baptist church, which is where I was mostly shaped. And then I went to an Anabaptist college, and I was a pastor in non-denominational spaces. So basically evangelicalism.
Okay. And when you were a pastor, were you a fundamentalist evangelical?
I was never a fundamentalist, because I don't know, I've always I have like a contrarian spirit about me, so I've always kind of like pushed back against stuff. Like I would describe myself when I was a pastor as like an edgy evangelical, and that I thought like women should be allowed to do whatever men do, and that like gay people are humans. But like that was my like edginess, and I was big on things like social justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you probably didn't get a tremendous amount of pushback that like a fundamentalist would have when they deconverted. Like, did you get a lot of heat and lose any friends?
Well, I definitely lost friends. And there are definitely people in my life who choose not to talk to me about religious stuff like that. But no, I don't have the experience of like hardcore religious fundamentalism and then leaving that.
Okay.
I know plenty of people who do. But yeah, that has not, I mean, luckily that hasn't been my experience, because I know that sucks. Like that's a shitty thing that people have to go through.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah. No, I get it. Like, trust me, guys. Like, I get it. I completely understand, like the work that you guys are doing, and like the heart behind what you're doing, and like trying to help people that are like in these kind of places that are toxic and unhelpful. Like, I'm for it. Like, I wouldn't be talking to you guys if I didn't at least value, what I think you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I know it's
me
hard.
personally, I'm not targeting like your version of Christianity
I got you.
whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is why I'm not really arguing today.
Yeah. Sure.
All right, let's is that good? Can I jump to the questions?
Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead.
All right, cool. This one's not really a question, but it kind of is. I've had to engage this so often, and this is one of the biggest pet peeves of mine, and it frustrates the hell out of me. So I'm going to let
Is
Josh.
it the definition of atheism?
No, not there yet.
Okay.
That's
that up, Elliot.
that's a little less worse for me than this one. This one really frustrates me, but this is a comment people misunderstand all the time, and they think we're the ones misunderstanding. But Josh, I'm actually going to let you start by answering this, because I have a feeling you also will agree with Elliot and I on how we're interpreting this. But here we go. I'm just going to pop it up there, and I'm going to let you guys do this because this just frustrates me. From Evelyn Frederick, y'all really misunderstand the purpose behind the rules put into place for having slaves. It was God knowing people were going to do this and having a say. I don't know what IoT means, but be able to redeem people. God is good.
No, that's bullshit.
Yep.
That's the same kind of justification that people would say, like, oh, well, it's okay if we beat our slaves if we read them the Bible because we can at least save their soul. It's disgusting. That is an abuse of religion. And also, I would disagree with this person because I don't like. It seems like they assume some kind of like settled future, like that. Basically, well, this is why it's going to be confusing. I affirm that God is omniscient. I just don't think the future exists to be known. So therefore, God doesn't know the future. So God doesn't know all of the things with any kind of certainty, only as a realm of possibility. So I would critique the classical theism understanding of God in that as well. But no, absolutely not. If you're saying that like God was somehow using slavery to make people love God, that is the exact kind of evil justifications that I think you guys are pointing against, and that I want to like shake hands and join with you and say, yes, that's no way. That does not, I would challenge this person and say, if you believe God is love, or if you take seriously the teachings of Jesus, justify Jesus's teachings with whatever this comment is. You can't do it.
And we could use that same exact logic to justify American slavery in the 1850s, because maybe it was for the greater good of the African Americans. Maybe they were taken out of Africa and to America, and they converted to Christianity. So it was good for them. Or perhaps, like, why were we so much more advanced in 1850 than the Israelite tribes were, that all of a sudden we were ready to get rid of slavery? Like, it makes no sense. Like, slavery is slavery is slavery. If you're owning someone as property, or they're not free to leave, or they're doing tasks for you that they're not getting paid for, or you're beating them, which the Old Testament prescribes, like, you're in the wrong.
Yep, I agree.
And not to mention, of all the 10 commandments God gave, do not covet, seriously, over don't own slaves. Like, he had no problem saying do not covet, but he couldn't tell them not to own slaves. He had to just go with it because they were going to do it anyway. No, that's an absurd way of thinking. That's just a justification for the evils of your God. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, maybe they weren't ready to stop murdering either. Maybe they weren't ready to stop stealing or bearing false witness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe he should have given them limited ways on how to steal properly. Steal this way.
Yeah.
If you do it this way, I'm going to make it better than the rest of the nations. No, it's just evil. This is what the Bible does to people. It's what, in my opinion, Christianity in general does. It just puts this mind virus in you and makes you think any way to justify the evils of the Bible. And it's just, anyway, I think we beat a dead horse here, but there you go.
Yeah.
Here is an actual question from Evan Garcia. A question to all three. Is there a way to explain a default human experience without inserting our experience or presuppositions?
I think, I don't think so. I don't think there's any objective view. I think we always have to insert our own experience and presuppositions.
My ultimate presupposition is I think, therefore I am, and everything else flows from that.
Yeah.
I don't think we can get outside of that. Like, we can't get out of our own human subjectivity. I think that's just something we have to wrestle with.
I mean, I agree. I suppose a sign, I've talked about this before, of hard solipsism, because I suppose if that was the case, we wouldn't even be able to explain it, would we?
No, so, you're talking about the idea that just I'm the only thing that I know exists. Everything else is.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that I exist.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
What chair? Yeah.
So, but that's a good question. It's a tough one. I'm not sure there's an answer to that other than no.
Evan's a good dude. I know Evan. He's a fun guy, a deep thinker.
This one just made me laugh. I know. Sorry, Josh. I'll actually let you respond to this one because you might have a different thought. But I love this because it just made me chuckle, and I agree with it. From Dean Kruger: every word a Christian utters in the name of their religion needs to be preceded by a heartfelt apology. You might actually agree with that on some sorts of religion of Christianity, but go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think it's funny, and I mean, I think too. Like, I think it's overstated, but I do think too he has a point. Like, there are things within the Christian tradition that's like I said, I don't want to say I'm a Christian because I'm afraid to be associated with certain things, especially what that means in the context of America today. But I think there are nice things that I could say that wouldn't necessitate an apology. But I get what he's saying and is fun.
He asks an actual question here. Josh, how awful does religion need to get for you to ditch it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I wrestle with that a lot. And this is actually a disagreement I have with my spouse, my partner, Noelle, because she wants nothing to do with church, religion, like the theology stuff, anything like that anymore for, lots of very good reasons. And like, I get hung up on like, I don't know, the pro-social benefits of participating within a community that seeks transcendence. Like, that's a net positive for the statistically average person. So I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, for all intents and purposes, like, I think I have very strong justification and reasons for walking away from Christianity completely. I just haven't fully. Yeah, it's a good question though, Dean. It's one, like I said, that I take seriously and ponder on a regular basis. But I don't know. Because yeah, go ahead.
There's a really good book called How to Kill God the Easy Way.
The marketing machine. Well done.
I think we need a little bit more clarification here. Evelyn Frederick comes back to us about the slavery thing. It's not justification. It's God adding boundaries that are bound to fail so that people would seek him. That's not what I'm saying. Want to clarify that?
Why not add the boundaries all the way out to don't have slaves?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. I've never bought that boundary argument either. That's like I I don't know, a pretty Christian thing to do is be like, oh, God gave us impossible rules because God knew we were going to break them, and then that would turn us to God. Okay. I don't know. I think that's silly.
Josh, I love when you sound like an atheist. And maybe that's what we have to get you. And I know it's random because you don't know what day you'll wake up, how you'll wake up each day. But I wish there was a way to capture you on a day that you were the atheist. That could be a lot of fun. That could be a fun show.
Come in and play that might be a fun exercise just to like to take on the character of atheist for the day and see what happens. Like argue. Yeah, there's a game that we like to play, a nerd game with some of my theology and philosophy friends, and it's best when there's an audience of people. But we call it au contraire. And basically you'll have to draw like a philosophical or theological like proposition out of a bag blindly, read it, and then you have to decide either you have to defend it or argue against it. And then whatever your opponent is, they have to do the opposite. And so it's like it's typically very funny because it's when you have two friends that know each other well enough and then make them defend something that you know they hate. It's a great time. So maybe it would be fun. Yeah,
that would be fun. We should do that. But how do you how do you get the list of questions?
Oh, so like sometimes like at Theology Beer Camp when we did it, we had like people write in stuff, and some of it was serious, but some of it was ridiculous. Like Jesus was a short king. Like that was one of the things that someone wrote. Like okay, or like God is just as confused as we are. That's the one that I drew out of the bag. Yeah, so like it can be fun, different things. That might be a fun game to play with you guys actually, just to see sometime.
We can try to defend Christianity.
Yeah, that'd be fun, and I'll be the atheist and tell you you're wrong.
that actually would be fun, and you're such a delightful person to have on. I totally think we should do that.
I would totally do it.
Let's talk about that, Josh, and maybe we can find a fourth. Maybe someone else that's a process or whatever.
Yeah, I could bring a fun friend on.
Yeah, we could probably do something like that. That could be a very fun show. Let's talk about it and see if we can plan that. That question that all of us were like, no to, Evan Garcia just said, cool. I thought that would be a uniting question. Indeed, it was.
Look at that, Evan trying to find common ground.
Yeah, good job. And I also think Evelyn is coming back with one more question that also may unify us.
Oh.
Evelyn Frederick says, do y'all believe in free will?
I
Not
say
even close.
Right. So am I going to be the one that does believe in free will?
Do you? You believe in free will?
Yeah, I believe in libertarian free will.
Now we got something to argue about.
Yeah. I don't believe in free will. I mean, again, this is another one of those troublesome words that people define so differently. We would need to spend time discussing what you mean by free will, what I mean by.
If Josh wants to come back on, like in a week or so or something, we can actually debate that because that would be a fun conversation.
I totally agree. That would, dude. We're gonna have to just have you as a regular, apparently. Yeah, this is really delightful. It's always fun talking to you, Josh. But yes, that's
great. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, that's a great question, Evelyn. And sorry we can't answer it any better than that because that would open up a whole new can of worms. Did I miss the live, Deborah? Yeah, sorry, Debbie, you missed it. We were, but it's okay because it'll be published here just in a few minutes as soon as we end. Let's see. Evelyn says, okay, then you wouldn't even attempt to understand my perspective.
I can attempt to, sure. The mark of an intelligent mind is to entertain ideas without accepting them.
Let's see. Oh, I'll catch the next one. Sounds great. And on that note, make sure everybody catches the next one because these are just some fun comments coming through now, but we do have to end. So everybody, thank you so much for being a part of this. Josh, any last comments from you, man?
No, yeah. Thank you guys so much. This was fun. Like I told you, Alan, I love being pushed and, whatever. So this is always fun for me. The intellectual conversation is a good time. And with people who aren't assholes, it makes it even better. So
Elliot?
That'll do for me. I think we've run the clock out.
All right.
Good conversation. It's nice to meet you, Josh.
Nice to meet you as well, Elliot.
Check out Josh's podcast, Rethinking Faith. The link is in the description below. So I encourage you guys to do that. If you're interested in hearing more from Josh, grab Elliot's book, How to Stop Being a Christian. The link is also in the description. And of course, you already heard me plug my book. You can grab that in the description as well. Every Christian has their own version of Christianity. We're here to unravel your conversion. Have a great day, everybody.